Hi, everyone. Welcome to my science journey. We are glad to have you join us today. We have an amazing guest who is also my mentor. He is called Dr. Sammy Wambua. And today he will be sharing his journey in a way that we term storytelling. And we welcome questions, feedback, and comments that you might have for him on the chat. So the earlier you start typing, the earlier we get to your questions. So in case you have any questions that you would have loved to ask Dr. Wambua on any platform and you never got a chance, this is your time. This is your time to shine. So we'll be getting those questions after 1:30. But for now, we're gonna start with a few questions from myself before we dive into that. So feel free to let us know where you're joining us from. Tell us your name, tell us where you're joining us from, and what you're excited about in this particular conversation. All right, thank you so much, Doc, for agreeing to be here today. We know you have a very busy schedule, but we are so excited to have you, tell your story on the My Science Journey platform today. And yeah, we are excited to hear and learn from you as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And with an introduction like that, I can't wait to hear what I have to say. So
All right. Okay, so we'll dive in, but I'm gonna start, with a warm-up. And my warm-up question is that, science takes much more than, doing good research. And I think that is something that you get to learn on the job. What is that moment for you that you then realize that actually it takes more than just good research to succeed in science?
yeah, just like you said, I think it's something you learn on the job. I'm not sure there can be like one instance or one aha moment when you go like, so it wasn't just about good research. It's something you sort of grow into. But looking back, you do see signatures like instances that has built this understanding over time. I think for most people, it's usually, let's say, the first grant rejection. And you can be sure, I've had several of those, but even before then, if I dial much, way back, I do remember you've gotten your first or the second employment like this, and you're doing good in science. And what that means also is that your group is starting to grow, and then you're having people joining the lab, and you're in charge of this group. And now it's no longer about objectivity of science anymore, but there's also human, relationships to have to deal with. Um, that also, has happened, or you're looking for a PhD. I think you guys, your time, a little bit better, but I do know I struggled, for example, getting a PhD position, even though I had quite a number of publications, which, told me that it wasn't just about, good science. And I do remember experiences even from my colleagues, without mentioning names. I have a friend that I think it was 2005, 2006, thereabouts. He won the FISA award for like doing,
Yeah.
excellent science. And that same year, he couldn't get the grant, one of these core grants that was expected of every good science to get. And you get feedback that says pretty much that your science was good and everything, but then we only had to, uh, um, fund so many people, and unfortunately you're not one among those. And it has not stopped. I think it continues. So I think I'm talking about communication being important, networks being
Yeah.
important,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so forth and so forth. And I'm leaving it even today. I think 2 years ago, my lab and I wrote maybe the most number of applications we've ever written, and all of them without fail were rejected. And I remember when the last one was rejected, the guys in the lab, I could tell they were really, really dejected. And so we agreed to meet and talk about this. And but while I was going to meet them, maybe I shouldn't mention names, but the lead person in one of these agencies that we had applied reaches out to me, and he says, "I'm so and so, I'm president for this organization that we had applied to. Can we talk?" And I say, "Yeah, let's talk." And he says, "I want to talk to you about your applications." And I say, "Great, I see you just rejected all of them." And he says,
Yeah,
"I'm very sad to have seen these ones rejected, but these are like the best of the applications we got." That wasn't making sense. Like, you rejected them, but you're saying that, they're good.
they're the
And he
best.
went on
Yeah.
and he went on to give, reasons why they're rejected. So you're right. I think it takes more than science, and the more I think is more than the science itself. Unfortunately, whenever I sit down to teach people these things, they have to learn on the job, just like you said. And there wasn't one single moment, but rather it's a compilation of experiences that still continue, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like that is deep. It's not how I expected us to start this conversation.
I'm
But
sorry.
thank you so much for sharing. No. You don't need to apologize, because I think something that I probably missed to say as we started is that the conversation we are having today is about unwritten rules in
Yeah,
science.
yeah,
Things that are not clearly spelled out or like clearly written for you as an SOP or as a way of like, JD kind
yeah,
of way of doing science, but things
yeah,
that you are expected to just know,
yeah,
And I think from what you're saying, it's clearly, speaks to some of those things. And I think it's good that we started on this particular note. And I'm
okay.
gonna circle back and ask you about those particular maybe things if you're comfortable sharing
Yeah,
that
yeah, that's fine.
the person highlighted that, people should actually, the more that people need
Yes,
to
yes,
be able
yes.
to succeed in science.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
before we dive into that, maybe a few of people know, actually, I think most people know you in different capacities,
yes,
including
yes,
me. So maybe
yes.
I think you need to give us a brief intro or a
Okay.
brief summary of
Yeah,
who Sammy
okay.
is,
Yeah,
and so that the audience can get a feel of who you
yeah.
are from a scientist's perspective.
Yeah, so I'm currently I'm wildlife genomics. I think this question really, I am what I am depends on who is asking. So I'm a wildlife
Yes, yes,
I'm a wildlife
absolutely.
a wildlife genomic scientist, but I also teach at Pwani University, which is why Ruth would say that I'm her mentor. This is where we met. I had the Biosciences Research Lab here at Pwani University, but before this, I worked in biomedical research sort of sector for about 15 years, actually. And so I worked with the likes of HIV, malaria in the context of human genetic polymorphisms. So a lot of what I'm sharing cuts across all these experiences. So in between, there's a huge switch between full-time biomedical research, which began maybe around 2001 to 2015, 16, and then jumping into teaching and mentoring and part-time, research. I don't know if that covers, but I feel like, yeah, that's me. I'm a father, my husband. Um, yeah, I'm a student of life.
Thank you for sharing that. Also, to just stop on that, I think you're leaving out a very significant aspect, which I think you do very, very well, which is in terms of building capacity or like mentorship. I think that is something that you do excellent and something that should be highlighted as well. Um, from that, I mean, I'm a bit
Yeah,
biased, but yeah,
it's
I
okay.
think that's something that should be
Yeah,
highlighted.
yeah, it's okay. I think as we continue the discussion, that will become apparent why that is left out. It is not intentional, but I think we are cultured that way to feel as though there's what people are calling academic kitchen work or academic housework, which is some
Mhm.
necessary stuff, which are actually the engine of science,
Mhm.
but yet that's never put out there. It is unrecognized, it's underrecognized, it's unrewarded. If you look at the evaluation metrics that are there, whether for promotion or whatever, we're
Mhm.
looking purely for grants and publications, not how much capacity you've built, how much leadership you've offered, how much mentorship you've given, and so forth. So I think sort of naturally we grow up thinking of it as either service or an extra thing that you do on the side, not something worth airing here. But you're right. I love working with students, but also generally just building capacity, putting tools in the hands of people that that can use these tools to change the fortunes of their lives. So um, we give all manner of trainings, and you're right. I think maybe I should be snapped into this reality, like. Hopefully, we'll have times when I can tell some of the stories. Even today, I've gotten calls that emanate from my experiences from capacity building and
Yeah.
that dialing back to research and collaborations that I'm supposed to run into. But yes, I love to build capacity. We are building infrastructures to be able to do this in a more structured way, which is how Recourse, for example, comes in. Um, um, yeah, so thank you for reminding me that.
And I love the fact that you brought out the aspect of it being, unrecognized and rewarded. Um, in terms of maybe the environment you're operating from.
Yeah,
But again, if you look at it from the perspective of the people that you've actually worked with, I would say it's sort of like rewarding if you
yeah,
look at the mentees, or if you look at the
yes,
sort of like capacity we've been able to create.
yes,
Maybe it's
yes,
just that the institution doesn't recognize it. And maybe that's what we need to discuss about,
yes.
what is this sort of like, idea of, oh, Sammy, you're expected to be mentoring students, but
Mhm.
you're not told, okay, this is clearly what you need to do as part of your job description.
Yeah, you're right, Ruth. I think part of the reason we don't, while it is unrecognized and unrewarded in the sense that I spoke about, but yet we don't quite complain, is because, like you said, it's ultimately fulfilling when we see the people with built capacity in, making it in life and, and the impact, being out there. So you're right. If reward means what comes from, let's say, formal engagements, like at work, me expecting to be promoted because I establish, recourse, or because
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
capacity building. I've done 20 trainings, throughout the year across the country,
yeah,
across the globe. Then, then it's not rewarding in that context. However, in terms of is it fulfilling? Is it
yeah.
impacting real lives? In that front, it is truly, truly rewarding, even fulfilling. I think the reason it is unrecognized, so that I can try to connect this with what you're asking, how do we
Yeah,
change this? I think part of the reason it's unrewarded, yeah, it's not as visible out there and spoken about, is because, like I said, evaluations, I think, are looking at a very narrow dashboard. It's publications, it's grants, that's it. And therefore, it's not incentivized enough. Like
mm,
perhaps people don't see the need to pursue it because, after all, um, what does it count for? Like,
yeah, yeah. You still hear me? Sorry.
it's okay. Let me see. Hello? Is it just me? This is unfortunate.
Hello?
Hi, is it me who dropped?
I don't know what happened. Sorry, can you hear me now?
Okay, so let's see.
I think, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. I wonder, was it my connection or was it yours?
I'm just checking. I'm not sure. But if you can hear me now, I think we can proceed. Sorry about that. David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Also, Wambo is back.
Uh, yeah,
And we are still live. We are still live.
all
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. Maybe my end, maybe, I don't know.
All right.
Can you hear me now? I'm
Yeah, I
sorry.
can hear you. Sorry, it's giving. I don't want to say what I wanted to say, so let me leave it there.
Okay, so I
Okay.
don't know how far I'd gone with
Yeah.
explaining how we can change the. I think I was saying they just need to for institutions to start having different metrics for impact. If you're a
Yeah.
researcher, I mean, think about it. If you're a researcher working in Kenya or let's say, in Africa, honestly, how much of an impact is a publication? You understand? Like if you're addressing like real human problems, don't you think context is important? Don't you think coming up with tools that have had like actual field applications, don't you think that's far much
Yeah.
more important than the number of
Yeah.
publications? Because a lot of publications tend to be very academical, and that's all. And this is how we
Absolutely.
end up with people like myself and my colleagues, professors
Yeah.
in engineering, teaching using
Yeah.
models made in China, and this is a
Yeah.
professor, so they couldn't even make the model themselves. I think all this needs to change, but
Yeah.
also I think the other thing is it's not just about institutions. I think it is also about us. If I were to go back to where we began from, I even forgot
Yeah.
that I'm doing capacity building. I think we need to
Mm,
be less modest about it. We need to be less modest. The Recourse website, for example, should have numbers somewhere that
yeah.
show what
Yeah.
impact we've had in the way that
Yes.
makes sense to us. How many
Yes.
people have we trained? How many trainings
Yes.
have we given? How many grants are
Yes.
we hosting? What are they,
Yeah.
valued at and things like this? I feel like some of those might be pointers to changing this narrative. I should
Yeah.
mention to you that Pwani is now, I think, trying to take strides towards this direction. We are starting to
Yeah.
have, so what used to be the Division of Research and Extension now has directorates under it. And one of the directorates will deal with innovation, entrepreneurship, and commercialization. And
Yeah.
the reason for that is so that we are not just doing research, but we're
Yeah.
also thinking of what products could
And
result
create
out of research,
it. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and our impacts now can start being counted
Yeah.
for things beyond publications and grants. So,
Yeah.
so I want to believe then leadership will, follow somewhere there, somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think now that we are speaking about recourse and now that, we've spoken about,
Yeah,
I mean, I think, yeah, I totally agree that you need to have that impact matrix somewhere because, yeah, I'm not sure whether you can maybe give an idea of roughly the numbers right now. But with this particular recourse, you've been able to show that building system and supporting people is also scientific work,
yeah,
and like already spoken about it, this particular side of leadership sort of
yeah,
seems invisible in some sort
yeah,
of way. And I
yeah,
think we've spoken about maybe ways of trying to change that narrative is by maybe trying to show the impact by, having the metrics, etc. But are
yeah,
there other ways you think, this we can be able to shift this particular narrative and be able to show that, there's this kind of leadership or this type of leadership in science, and this is
mhm,
the impact that it's creating in terms of
yeah,
the um, science capacity building? Or,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think some level of activism. I've read your paper a while back, the one you wrote about, your mentorship experience, for example, and I don't know who tells us that we always have to publish like hard science, and when the results are good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I'm calling activism is us taking this thing by our hands and saying, you know what, we're discovering this to be an important thing. Can we now start even publishing around, and there are a few publications actually out there. You'll be surprised. There are a few publications. If you looked up academic housekeeping, I mean, there are interesting publications about these forgotten drivers of success in research that are otherwise forgotten. And I feel like you understand, and I feel like if we start making such noise, it might just get to the right places. And also, if we start nurturing also the upcoming scientists to grow up not over glorifying publications and grants over the soft skills and the
Yep.
infrastructure
Yeah.
and capacity buildings that's important for the science to run.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do think something can happen. I think something can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings me back to actually the conversation and where we started from, where you spoke about the more in
Yeah,
science,
yeah, yeah,
like the
yeah,
more that
yeah.
is required.
Yes,
And I would
yes,
like
yes.
for you to sort of like highlight this, if
Mhm.
this is something you're
Yeah,
comfortable sharing as
yeah,
well,
that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
about, about the more.
So, we think of science as a systematic way of generating, building, and organizing knowledge in testable hypotheses. So you're thinking empirical objectivity and all, like it's a system devoid of human misgivings and human biases. It turns
Yeah.
out science is very much a human system, also subject to the dynamics of human relationships, networks, trust, even gatekeeping, and all these things. And therefore, how you navigate, I think, like what you need to do to get your foot in might be actually far more important than what you do once your foot is in there. And I think some of the pointers for me have to do with uh, networking. I think networks are very, very important. If you remember when you guys were going for your attachments, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
bring this up because now it makes you look very young. But yeah, the other day when you're in
Yeah.
third year and you're going out for
Yeah. Yeah.
attachment, the debriefings, if you remember the debriefings we
Yeah.
would do with Dr. Cheryl and DC, who kept saying things like the science world is a very small world.
Yeah.
So you're going out there, conduct yourself like this and conduct yourself like this other way. Because we had learned from experience that the networks, it's amazing just how far your word or your ideas run when there are people that know you, and they know you for good reasons. You understand that network, and it's amazing how many times someone will ask me about you even when you didn't list me as your referee, just because the only other person they know from Pwani University, where you're saying you came from, apart from you who's applying for the position in their organization, is me, and they'll say,
Yeah.
do you know
Yeah.
this lady? And if I
Yeah.
don't remember you, or I
Yeah.
remember you for the wrong reasons, then your goose is fried. So
That's the
I mean,
problem.
like, so I think
Yeah.
networks are very important. Communication is very important. Communication is very important, like how you phrase things, how you frame things, how you approach, people. Legitimacy is very important. Like, I'm working, let's say locally, but yet
Yeah.
wanting to compete globally and all this. And
Yeah.
so you're not often, I mean, part of I'm as successful as I am received, back here at home. But how will they receive me if I do not have their permissions, for example, to work in their spaces, if they don't trust that the science I'm doing is solid, if they don't trust the science, which is, let's say, my ideas or whatever I want to do with this work will have easy and useful application into, whatever problems, they are facing. I think all these things like human relationships are far much more important in science. And then there's also what we hardly speak about, which is gatekeeping. There's quite a bit of gatekeeping.
Mm,
You understand? So the politics side of things, there's also that, unfortunately, and and it looks bad when we are outside, but when you're inside, you start saying it depends. Because I'll give you an example. If you're interviewing for a position, you only have one spot, and there is
yeah,
this young man that has been under your mentorship for a
yeah,
year, has been very
yeah,
honest and very hardworking and everything.
yeah,
And people apply, and he's one of those that has applied, and they come and you interview them. And on
mm,
scorecard, two people tie at the top.
yeah,
The person that has always worked under you, and this other guy that has come off the street, but quite
yeah,
sterling
yeah,
performance.
yeah,
You only have one position. How do you end up deciding who do you give? Then you
yeah,
realize now you have to resolve to the relationships you have with these people and how much you know of each of the people. And it's not nepotism. I think it's just human nature. So I'm just saying,
yeah,
much as science is objective,
yeah,
it is also a human system, and
mm,
you're not going to tease it out from the dynamics of human interests, human preferences, human
yeah,
interactions, relationships, and trust, credibility, and all these things. Unfortunately, all of those things are very, very important. And the reason I was saying that is because, I mean, science is just science. I don't know how much of what I taught you you're using now. It's very little of it, but how
yeah,
much you need to master to navigate,
yeah,
all this is a lot. And yet we hardly sit you down to tell you, this is how, when this happens, this is what you're supposed to
yeah,
do. And if you're
yeah,
applying to these places, there are weird experiences, without mentioning names. For example, you write a paper. I've written a paper, and sent it to my mentor at the time, and he looks at it and he says, "I think this is very good. I think I'll send it to Ruth to have a look, and if
mm,
he likes it, if she thinks it's good, we can actually publish it in Nature." So now we are publishing
mm,
in Nature. You understand? So we're publishing in
yeah,
Nature. I don't know why. I don't know if it is because the work is good or because Ruth now is going to be included in the paper. And
mm,
should Ruth actually be in that paper if they're only
mm,
reading it after I have written? You see all these things.
yes, yes,
And,
yes.
and unfortunately, that's happening.
That's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, when you're speaking about that, I was just reminded about a phrase that I think someone told me, that people buy into people before they buy into ideas. And so
Exactly.
that sort of like just cements that understanding of why, some things actually happen the way they work. And thank
Yes.
you so much for bringing that out. Yeah, I think the people, we need to sort of like come to sort of like an understanding that some things, it's not because you're not good, at the science, or you're not doing well. It's just that, like you said, there's different things that happen in the background in terms of like gatekeeping, networks, etc.
Yeah, and
And
some
yeah,
of those
yeah,
are dependent on you as a researcher.
yeah,
Unfortunately, there are a few of those that are dependent on the funding agencies, for example.
yeah.
Uh, the reason the example I was giving you earlier, where we applied, we got rejected. In fact, that's a very interesting story because we made the most number of applications. All of them were rejected. Then we learned from the funder himself that the science was solid. It wasn't the reason. Actually, the reasons had to do with, they felt like, uh, of the people that were funding, or of the projects that were funding in Africa, Kenya was taking the lion's share. And so there was an unspoken rule that we're going to reduce on the number of, fundings we
Mm,
give to Kenya. So if you're applying
yeah.
afresh, that just worked against you. Now, what's also interesting and a twist to this story is the fact that that year, I think we also raised the most amount of money for research than, even though all of our applications were rejected, we ended
Mm,
up with much more money than maybe
wow.
another year. And that money came through people now reaching out and saying, I have this piece of work that I need to be done. Would you be so trust? You understand? Because why are they reaching out to you? We ended up actually turning down jobs because there was, there was too much to. I had about, I think, 4 students in the lab who had just finished undergraduate and they were looking for masters. We ended up putting them, all of them, in masters, fees, stipends, and everything paid. It's amazing. So I think that sort of underscores the fact that maybe the more is more important than the the science. Of course, the science is very important, but without these human aspects, I think it is completely useless. It is completely useless. So the money doesn't have to come from just you writing good science and attracting grant. It could actually come from the fact that someone trusts you.
Yeah, thank you so much for highlighting that. And before I actually do a follow-up question on that, I'd just like to remind everyone to tell us where they're joining us from and to start typing questions for Dr. Sammy on the chat. We will get to them as soon as we can. We've already crossed the half-hour mark, so we are happy to start taking questions from the audience. And I see there's a few comments on the chat. I'm not sure whether I should read them. I will read them later on maybe.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you all for engaging on the chat. Let's keep on, let's maintain the conversation, and yeah, let's see those questions. So Doc, let me, circle back to, we've spoken about networks, trust, credibility. And I think one of the things personally that I have watched you do excellently is in terms of like collaborations or like, forming, and not just like forming or establishing collaborations, but as well as maintaining them. And I think this is something that I personally would want to like learn more from you. And I think most young scientists would be interested to know, what is this thing that, okay, maybe there's a couple of them, but what are the things that you need to understand when you're setting up collaborations, and how do you even like, maintain them? Because starting is okay, but like, how do you maintain them to ensure that, there's subsequent sort of like, or even not from the same, but you sort of like get new networks from the collaborations that you have established before.
Wow, okay. So I think I'll be proudful if I also said I sat down and thought, and then came up with this strategy. Just like you started saying, I think most of these things I've sort of grown into, and you can be sure there should have been mistakes somewhere before finally finding one's sweet spot. But I do think the thing is. Collaborations are not just about science alignment. You understand. So it's not you're into bioinformatics, which is very complementary to genomics, and therefore we can do something. No, it's a human relationship at the end of the day. And I think you nailed it when you said when you talked about people. I can't remember how you put it, but it's like they
before they buy into ideas.
Exactly. Yeah, no one cares what you know before they know what you care, or that you care. You understand? So I've found, I mean, if we had the time, I could even flashlights, but it has become very difficult for me now to speak about collaborations without preceding with the word trust. So I don't just build collaborations, I build trust and collaborations. I think that's important. There's just something invincible with when people feel like they can see all around you. Okay. Now remember, the collaborations aren't just with fellow scientists. It starts with the local partners, for example, and so forth and so forth. So let me talk about things that have happened today and yesterday. So today on my way here, I got a call from someone they might be watching, so I won't say where, but somewhere in Africa. that I gave a training in. And the training was on something that where I felt bioinformatics was complementary, but then it was being left out. And I actually offered, I said, no, I think let's add bioinformatics into this. And they said, oh, we don't have enough hands into the deck. I said, I'm happy to just do what I'm able to do and continue doing this with the participants online after I've gone back to the lab, because then I can link them with my, people. So a while back, this person writes and says, could we, can I enlist your help in reviewing a program we are mounting in bioinformatics? And I said, I don't mind, I can do that. So she says, okay, that's great. I'll follow up and then I'll give your contacts. And so while I was driving, coming home now to take this call, she calls, this is, I think, a month later, and she says, I think there's been a confusion. I thought these guys wanted you to review a program, but they actually want you to work with them. They want you to like be a visiting lecturer, something. And is that something you would want to do? And I'm like, if they are writing something, we can look at it and then we can make the decision. That's one. I'll tell you why I'm telling you that story. Yesterday, I had a call from a consortium of wildlife managers. So some of the organizations that are working with giraffe particularly, and there's something they want us to do. And how did you know of me? It's someone, a student. So you do know annually I give wildlife genomics, workshops that are hands-on and they run for 2 weeks on end. And they had from someone a student actually, a master's student at Arusha, Nelson Mandela Institute of, I can't remember what it's called, but the university in Arusha. She gave, I don't know what she said about me, but these guys reached out and they're like, we need to do this with giraffe and this and that, and with, would you want to come? And now the reason I'm telling you these stories is because you sense trust. I mean, the only reason these collaborations are actually chasing you is because you've taken time to build trust, to build credibility, to showcase the fact these trainings are never advertisements, honestly. I'm sure you know me. So it's never something I'm doing in the hope that I'll get money out of it or I'll get collaboration. It's something I do because I feel I sleep at peace with myself, having done, this, knowing that I impacted someone's life today potentially. But see what it does. The collaborations actually come looking for you. Trust. So when people feel like they can see all around you, and let me bring also an angle that might not be obvious, because some of your partners are not just the scientists, it's also the community people, but most importantly, also the government agencies. For example, the ones responsible for regulating research, whether by giving you permits or whatever. I found that even in the context of unresponsive policies, where we say you apply for permit, it takes too long before it comes, or you're ordering for stuff, you have your grant and you're ordering stuff and the procurement department doesn't work. I found that the people seated in those offices are actually human beings. And if you understand, if you took time to build trust with them and to allow them to see all around you, so they realize you're not doing this because you feel special. You're not doing this to earn a name. You're not doing this. You're doing it because you think it can help something that's important for both of us. Most of them become humans. Most importantly, your tribe starts gravitating towards you. And that opens doors that no one can shut. So I'm just going to harp about trust. I think for me, it is trust, credibility, and is what you're doing important to us? How is it important to us? Yeah. So I think that even as we were talking, I've got a message coming in. At the time I would read it, and I know I've seen, roughly from the notification, it's about a new work that someone wants to do with us. This is a repeat client, so someone we've worked with in the past. Why are they coming back? It's because, of course, in the past you've contacted yourself. So I think if we were to be intentional, if we were to be honest with what we want to do, because that doesn't mean we do an excellent job always. No, we fail, but we fail very honestly. And
Yeah.
those things, when failures are there, are discussed. I think I don't know. I find that invincible. Like no one would really resist that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think you're a living example for that. So
Thank
so
you.
that's
Thank you.
yeah. And Doc, you've even spoken about, new initiatives are probably coming up or collaborations, etc., as well as the work that you've been involved with. And from someone that has watched you from afar, I mean, having worked with you and then now watching you from afar, I sort of like have an understanding of the sort of different shoes you sort of get to wear,
Yeah.
whether it's like when working with corals or when doing like, now elephants, now I'm hearing giraffes,
Yeah.
that sort of
Yes.
work. But you also do like molecular biology, you do genomics work. You sort of like what I would term like a jack of all trades in, in the science field. I feel like you sort of like get to wear different sort of shoes. But there's a way that all of these things sort of like align in one broad sort of like identity. And I'm just a bit curious, how did you get to, maybe there wasn't like a one instance that, you got to that point, but how is it that you were able to build, I would say, this one huge field where everything sort of like fits in, and it's sort of like gives you this sort of like identity, and people are not like dismissing you and saying, oh, Sam is just like a molecular biology scientist and doesn't know anything about conservation, or maybe Sam is doing conservation work, they don't know anything about maybe bioinformatics, genetics, but like it's in a way that brings an interdisciplinary kind of thing, but in a way that is not being dismissed. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It does make a lot and I think that's a very important question. The reason I think it's important is because if we have young scientists, I think upcoming scientists watching, I think this might be the most important hint I give into, your like career pursuit, I think. It's not something I designed to do. I have to be honest. I didn't design it. Almost came accidentally. So what happened was when I switched from biomedical research into wildlife genomics, I wasn't even calling it a wildlife genomics. You remember my PhD was in coral metagenomics. So I cut my teeth into this thing working with corals and, doing bioinformatics around corals. And soon I started getting calls, from KWS, from WRTI, from all these organizations wondering. Also, we hear there's someone, doing genetics in the context of animals now. Could you look at our giraffes? Could you look at, this? Could you look at this? And then I realized I couldn't say no because the need is there. And that's why I was saying this is important. Look, uh, if you're doing anything around genomics or bioinformatics or whatever, that's not a discipline for me. I feel like it's an accessory that you can use to understand just about any disciplines. And don't limit yourself. There's a lot of need out there, which is why. So in my lab, we have a joke. We say we have no allegiance to a species. So over time now, and I know, I mean, you're right. I think the breadth, when you're scattered like that, it almost comes across as a lack of depth or a lack of focus. But I promise you, over time, the breadth now is a very deliberate strategy that we're using, and the depth is in genomics. And then we're using genomics to cut across all these species. As long as they have DNA and they are of conservation concern, then we are going to work on them. So I'm not a lot of things. I don't consider myself a lot of things. Like I'm not an elephant expert, a coral expert, mangrove expert. I'm a wildlife genomics person. And then, so that's where the depth is. In other words, I'm just trying to defend myself, like the scatterbrain or the breadth is not for lack of focus or depth. Actually, the depth is in genomics, but then we are happy to apply it in these other areas, as we are called. And the reason I thought the young scientists need to hear this is because now you know my background. It was
Yeah.
in biomedical research,
Yeah.
but I'm the one working with animals. And go do your research. If you find anyone doing wildlife genomics in Africa,
Yeah.
chances are their background is not in wildlife.
Mm,
You understand? So
yeah.
do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're rolling out a program, master's program in conservation biology. That's one
Yeah.
of the things we're trying to change. We want to generate new scientists that are all-rounded. If they're in
Yeah.
conservation, they need to understand the animal from the atom to the
Yeah.
molecule to the cell to, so that because a lot of people working in the conservation space, they know the animal in, the whole organism and its habitat. The
Yeah.
moment you start getting them inside the animal, there's a problem. And my message to upcoming scientists is the opportunities are there.
Yeah.
The opportunities are there. You can very easily come and get one species and consider yourself, an expert in that
That's it. But
in that
that's
species. And right now, we are spoiled for
yeah.
choice. So I'm just going to
Yeah.
remain in genomics and apply it for whatever the organisms that will come our way.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And one last question before I sort of like take a break and get to the comment section
Yeah.
would be because we've talked about building capacity, which you do excellently. We've spoken about mentoring students, and you've actually highlighted about your lab and how you're able to you're running different projects in the same
Yeah.
lab.
Yeah.
And this could be a lot, topping it up with like being a dad, being a husband, and is there a point where you've sort of like questioned whether this sort of like doing all this is sustainable,
Yeah.
and what has helped you keep the momentum at points where you questioned whether it's really worth it putting in
Yeah.
100 on literally everything?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So let me surprise you. I haven't. I've never thought it was unsustainable, and the reason for that is because I think there are too many examples in history of people that have done much more and achieved much more than I have. So when I look at that, I feel like, no, there's still more to do. However, it does not take away from the assumption you're making that it's a lot. So what I have doubted is whether I have what it takes to sustain it. Is it
Mm,
sustainable? Definitely it is, but perhaps by someone else, not myself. I've doubted that. I felt like, but am I? So I always felt like I knew it's doable, but I'm like, um, I think I must be doing something wrong because 24 hours in a day doesn't seem enough. I'm the kind that would go to bed with my laptop and all this, and my students know that I'll be answering texts and emails, like in the middle of the night, and when do you get to sleep and all this. But something
yeah,
happened that's helped me a lot, and that's made me, stick through this. And I think it's improving the quality of my life. I think about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, a new person that was seeking collaboration from Netherlands came to our lab, and I explained what we're doing and what I thought were our areas of joint interest where we could, collaborate. And there was two of them, and the lady asked, so when you have new students joining your lab, whose business is it to orient them in the lab? And I said,
mm,
of course, I do it very proudly, of course. I do it. You remember the Alpha, Alpha Kaimba and people
yeah,
like this. I mean, I'll be the one in the lab showing them where the samples are. And when we
yeah,
have a new set of primers, delivered, I'm the one going to resuspend them because I fear they might contaminate them, and then the whole of that batch is messed up. Uh,
yeah,
so I said, I'm the one, and she nearly got electrocuted. She was like, "Wait, what do you mean? With all this work, you actually do the orientation yourself? Can't you hire a lab manager?" And I'm like, "Are you out of your mind? What do you mean I hire a lab manager in the Pwani
yeah,
University sort of setting, in a public university setting? How do I start hiring, a lab
yeah,
manager? The lab isn't even mine, and so forth." So I didn't take a lot of interest in what she was saying until when Commission of University Education requires you to have a maximum of 3 master's students. And
Yeah.
then I'm the one with 11, you understand, and then 4 PhDs. So when this started happening, I realized there's going to be a problem. This won't work as I envisioned it would work. So she visited, I think, 2 years ago, and I went and I said, you tell me what you're telling me that I want to understand. And she spoke about something she called thesis ring. She said in her lab, she has like senior students,
Yeah.
which is what I have set up now in the lab. She has senior students that she calls the thesis ring. And the thesis ring, so the way at least it works also in my lab is that if I have a new student joining the lab now,
Yeah.
I have one sitting with them to
Yeah.
synchronize expectations and the general idea of what we are going to be working on.
Yeah.
Then they go and write a concept note. I don't look at the concept note. The concept note is looked at those senior students. So these people like Rodney, who you've worked with, and others.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they look at it until they are happy. If they are happy, then it comes to me so that I look at it once and
Yeah.
we're on the road running. So I think building systems, moving
Yeah.
from hero mode to
Yeah.
systems mode is key to hacking. They say that success that has got no successor is still failure. So if you find you've done all these things, but some things can't happen unless you are physically there yourself, then
Mm.
there's something you're doing wrong. So I've spent a lot of time this year and the year before, and even I think the other, just trying to build systems. This is why you would find people like Asatsa, who started here in undergraduate and went away to do masters, is back here because I want people with, I want the institutional memory to remain, and I don't want to be the one going back to the fridges every time we have a student coming, in. And so, of course, you end up delegating even these other things, and your work kind of, it has not improved by 50%, but it has certainly improved. And that gives me hope that if I did more of that, being intentional in building a system to support me and that I can delegate, to, even as I oversee their growth, I I think it eventually will be sustainable. If it all has to revolve around me, then there's something I'm doing that's wrong. I hope that
Yeah.
addresses the question.
Yeah, I totally like that, phrase that success without a successor is totally failure. And I
Yeah,
think that is one thing that most senior scientists should sort of like learn in terms of,
yeah,
especially in the continent, in
yeah,
terms of delegation,
yeah.
and in also in the line of mentorship, because then it also helps to build the next PI or the next,
Yeah.
senior scientist. So I,
Thank you.
I I really love that aspect. And I'm
Mm.
aware that our time is quickly
Oh,
running out. I think we got even an alarm. But
oh,
before I
that's
go
short.
to the comment section, because I don't think there's a question yet, there's just a couple of comments
Mhm.
which I'd want to read.
Please
Maybe
do.
my final question would be, if there is one thing you could change about how scientists are trained in Africa,
Mm.
not in terms of content, but in terms
Yeah.
of the mindset,
Yeah.
what would it be and
Yeah.
why?
I think if there's a mindset that I would want change in how we train it's around uh, change from permission seeking to agency.
Mm,
I'll explain. So I feel like a lot of very good, talented students are trained to believe that they should wait for the right time, which is always never now, the right place, which is usually never here, and
mm,
the right collaborations, which are usually coming from elsewhere, not from amongst your peers, before they
mm,
start doing real science. And this is how, and it has become a very vicious cycle because even the guy training you
mm.
himself hasn't had a breakthrough. I mean, all they can do is perhaps just teach. They can't quite practice,
Yeah,
you see?
yeah,
And I think that I want training that doesn't leave a student with that belief that, like I'm waiting for some sort of permission to do what I have to, but rather training that will endow them with the thinking that I'm a scientist now, surrounded by very unique circumstances and very unique problems that should be inspiring me to design appropriate, solutions for my context, and build the collaborations with the people that are just around. Always, I mean, I think always the best place to begin from is where you are at. And look, whatever we call international or global science, it is local where it began. You understand? But we are the ones that are afraid of putting our local science out there, and yet it is all we have. And when we don't do that, we end up aping. We end up aping because we want to do what is international or what is global, which is just aping, and you're aping stuff that cannot be transferable in your own context. And unfortunately, on behalf of all lecturers, I would want to apologize for misleading students this way. I don't think we should be training students this way. I think we should train them with the mindset that you are scientists now. There must be something you can do now. You will know. I mean, when I worked with Bernadette, even from the time she was in third year, she would generate ideas, or she would challenge me with questions, out of which would write grants and get money. She was in third year in undergraduate. So, and she's not necessarily unique. Like, there's far too many students like that, but we never give them that opportunity. We never even, and the ones that get there, like Bernadette, it's perhaps out of their own initiative rather than the training system, getting them there.
Yeah, absolutely. Whew, I feel like it. If you leave this place without having learned from Daktari's insights, I don't know. I honestly don't know. But before we wrap up, I'll just quickly go through a few comments. I see now people are starting to type questions, and this is a problem, because then we're almost at the top of the hour. But I understand we lost a few minutes because of the technical glitch. So Daktari, maybe we can extend to like
that's
10 minutes max.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
All right. Okay, so I'll quickly read the comments first. So I'll start with a comment from Prof. Suhaila, who says, following from Mombasa, super proud of both of you, Sammy and Ruth. We are both living examples of how you positively impact the lives you touch. Keep up the great work.
Shout out to Suhaila.
Yes. And then there's Moffat, who says, thank you for sharing that experience, especially when we were heading out for attachment. So I think you can remember Moffat from and then there's Hadija, who says, joining from Mombasa, Kenya. I remember that part of the paper Dr. Sammy wrote. We collaborate from strength, not from dependency.
Oh, yeah.
And that is something that all of us should, absolutely should take home with. I actually love it that we collaborate from a place of strength and not from a place of dependency, especially for scientists, like for us scientists who are coming from, or who are based in the continent.
Yes.
And then we have, I don't want to, so there's others who are just saying where they're joining us from. There's David from Kenya, Hesbon from Ireland, John from Kilifi, Kenya. There's John Michael as well. I think that's the same person. And then there's Daniel from Brussels. And there's Salome from Narok. There's Moffat from Busia. There's Sophie. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. I think it's, I don't know whether it's Sophetogenius. I think that's the name you use, flowing from Kilifi.
Sophetogenius. I know who that is.
Okay. And then Salome says, science teaches us through experience and its unwritten rules. Grateful for you sharing your insights, Doc. And then Ngina says, great talk, Dr. Sammy and Ruth, quite insightful. Biggest takeaway is the essence of transparency and integrity, and not only in this field, but generally. And now I'll just do the quick questions. So the first one is from Lina. She says, great insights, Dr. Sammy. You mentioned something about publications, and we understand that some universities do not award a master's degree if the students does not have any publications. What are your thoughts on this? Is it a good way to assess an individual's scientific skills? And in your opinion, what is the best way to assess scientific competency and research impact? Maybe that's too long. Should I read it again?
No, I think I got it. It's fine.
Okay.
And thankfully, David also posted it in the chat here.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. So I think that's a very good question, Lina, and I hope you're keeping well with the cold in the UK. Man, I think that's huge because maybe this is the system you guys are going through where there's a distinction between training that leads to dissertation and training that leads to thesis. And one of them shows that you can do supervised research while the other one shows that you can do unsupervised research. My own very honest opinion is that really a publication as a prerequisite to graduation is completely needless.
David?
Yes, I think
Okay.
Dr. Wambua dropped
I
here.
think we lost him again.
Yeah.
Sorry guys, a bit of a technical glitch. We just give a few minutes for Dr. to join us back.
I'm sorry.
I think we lost you again. Sorry. I think we lost you again.
My
Can you
internet,
hear me now?
I'm sorry, something. Yeah. So for my, in terms of, I want my students to publish. In fact, when they come in for masters, I try to get a chapter in a way that is publishable. But this is not important for graduation. It's not important as a prerequisite for for graduation. That's what I'm thinking. The second part of what will be the best metrics for judging or assessing, I think, competence in research. I think that is context specific. This thing about publications, I feel like it is too westernized. It serves very small purpose. Does it make sense to you that I'm a professor who has had no real impact to the society, but I'm teaching and in the university and producing students with PhDs and so forth and so forth? Don't you think my competence should rather be judged by things that I do directly into society? For example, have I produced anything that has field applications? Yeah. Have I commercialized anything? And I'm not saying money should necessarily motivate us, but I'm saying, are we truly inspired by our own problems? And if we are we in the end actually producing real solutions to those problems? Because it looks very good when we are defending the proposals of what we want to do and why we want to do it. And this is why communities are having what people call, I think, research fatigue, which is they feel like they are over-researched. Why are they feeling like that? Because, we've gone to them hundreds of times saying, now we want to do this research in the hope that we'll get this thing, we'll get these answers. But in the end, we have nothing to show, so I feel like those products and applications should be, I think, better indicators of how impactful and how successful and how competent one has been in their research, more than the publications and the number of grants that you bring in. But again, that's a very personal and unpopular, I think, opinion.
Great. Thank you, Doc, for sharing that. There's also a question from Lina. So I'm just trying to plug my charger. There's a question from Lina on the chat as well. I think there's a second question, but maybe we can go.
That's the one you asked. I think the second one is Mora, Ruth.
Yeah, there's a second one that Lina has posted later on, but I think we can answer first. Ruth says, looking back on your journey, are there any bottlenecks you later managed to overcome, and what helped you break through? Yeah.
Yeah. So you will have to post what Lina has posted next if I'm to answer it, because I'm not seeing that. But thank you, Ruth, and I hope you're doing well with your PhD pursuits. Of course, too many bottlenecks. Like I said, the switch medical research into teaching and doing wildlife wasn't easy. I mean, like, that was very, very difficult. It took a lot of time for me to. I mean, I had become very aware very early on after a few publications that I think I needed to be in a different sort of space, but making that switch wasn't the easiest, because it's not something do. Systems have to like line up. There ought to be an organization or institution that's willing to take you on, and not just for free, but be paying, for example, and so forth and so forth. And how did I go about overcoming it? I guess just resilience. I mean, I wish you knew how long it took me to eventually get into to teaching, which is how I wanted to get into the research that I'm doing now. But yes, a lot of resilience, and that it will work. What I'm doing now was also one day an abstract thing that eventually worked. Just constant belief, but also not just it's active waiting. Okay, it's not blind waiting. It's not slothfulness. It's not just waiting, as we say, by faith. Yes, by faith, but knowing when to do something. Basically, just trying to do as much as possible of the natural and leave the supernatural to the supernatural to sort it.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Dr. And I think the final questions, which is from Lina, is now the one that's where she's asking, out of curiosity, why do you do research?
Yes. Okay.
The first time you wanted to do research.
Okay. So I didn't know it was called research, but when I finished Form 4, I was actually called to Moi University to go study Bachelor of Arts in Cultural Studies. All right. And then I could tell, okay, I don't know what I want to do, but I'm sure it is not a Bachelor of Arts in Cultural Studies. And I knew very roughly it has to be within, the sciences. And I just started, going in that direction. So this is how I ended up transferring to University of Nairobi, doing what they're calling BSc General. And I think I ended up landing where I'm landing because there was always like this T junction, and you feel like this doesn't feel like it. I feel peaceful this way, and so forth. And you end up going that way. Then fourth year, we had a very weird system where you only few people were given the opportunity to do research. And when I did research, I think how it was challenging my mind and the freedom it allowed me to be an authority at something. Like my mentor in undergraduate project, Professor James Gordon, uh, really helped me turn the table all together and said, now you're the teacher, because I'll help you ask the right questions, but in terms of the answers, it is you to get the answers, and you have to convince me that. So that freedom, I think, and the mental challenge that it was giving me, I think that, if I have to be honest, that must have been the burning bush moment for me. But of course, now, once you get to it and realize the amount of power you wield in your hands to be able to solve actual human problems, that becomes an icing on the cake, I guess. I hope that helps. Who asked this particular question? Is it still Lina?
That's Lina. Yeah, that's still Lina.
Okay. Well, very philosophical questions. No problem.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. for answering Lina's questions and as well as the questions from the rest of the audience. And I think there's, okay, I think this is a comment or question. Let me just read it. This is
Okay.
the final one I'm reading though, so, so that we can close.
Okay.
Seeing as most of us are trained out there most often in the West, could you comment on the reintegration back into research systems in our home country? This is from the Makiki, I think.
Okay, I don't know who that is, but I think it goes, I feel like it goes back to what we were talking about, human relationships,
Yeah,
networks. I think it's very admirable thing that someone will be trained out there in the best of their systems and be desirous of coming back. And the
yeah,
truth is you're needed back here.
yeah,
Uh, and you need the networks. I think start
yeah,
with networks. I think reach out to people within your fields who can
yeah,
trust you. Yeah, if you're just writing, of course, you know how it goes. If the first email I'm seeing from you is one where you're asking for a favor, then I don't know how genuine you are. But
yeah,
I do believe that's what I'm helping my students now do. I was in Italy the other day and I met all these wonderful guys, most of whom are doing stuff that I think will be useful to my students. And I ask
yeah,
the students to go to their profiles and see if they like anything there and just engage
yeah,
them in the discussions around what it is that they're doing
yeah,
and not come up around as desperate because
yeah,
as someone quoted what I wrote earlier on, eventually if you're
yeah,
to collaborate, it should be on
yeah,
on strength, not on dependency. So network.
yeah. Wow, thank you so much, Dr. I think this brings us to the
Thank you.
end of this conversation. We truly,
Thank
truly
you.
appreciate your insights. I, for sure, have learned a lot, even though I have sort of like interacted and learned from you in the past. But I think like this conversation has opened, or has given me insights that I didn't have before. And so thank you so much for sharing,
Thank you.
your experiences, as honest as they are with us, and even using like live examples. I think that
Yes,
is
yes.
something that we've all like learned from. And yeah, so thank you so much for that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me and for the opportunity to be able to share. I hope something was helpful to someone.
Absolutely. All right, this brings us to the end of the My Sense Journey 2025, actually, iteration. We had you as our final speaker, so
Ah,
the honors are yours. So this
yeah.
brings us to this series this year. Thank you all for working with us throughout the entire year from January to December. We've gone through, 4 series actually throughout the year. We started with like women in science, jumped into, men in science, then did science communication series, leadership in science, and now unwritten rules. So we've actually done 5 themes. And if you've
Wow.
missed out on any of those, you can get this information or like this, recap of the speakers and the sessions that we've had on our YouTube channel. So make sure to go to our YouTube channel, My Science Journey. And while you're there, make sure to subscribe, to like can you imagine the content that, for example, Dr. Sammy has shared with us today, and you are not liking it? Why? So yeah, make sure you go to our YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe, and we will see you next year, God willing. Thank you for joining with us. Till next time, see you then.
Bye-bye.